We're here in Marion, Indiana, the studios of the University.
Hello, I'm Kristen Estes, and this is Lakeshore Reporter. On this episode of Lakeshore Report, we're doing things a little bit differently. Hi, I'm Kristen Estes, and I'm here with Lakeshore Report's Stephen Latimer. We're going to be taking a look back on some of our favorite and most impactful stories from the past year. So we've covered a lot of really wonderful, really interesting stories, but we've sort of cherry-picked here, right?
Right, exactly. Some of our favorites.
Some of our favorites and the ones we think are going to have greater ramifications as we go forward into the next year. So for our first story, in 2015, there was some positive movement for the Regional Development Authority, particularly when it comes to the Westlake Corridor Project, which is a plan to extend the South Shore Rail through communities like Hammond and Munster, through Dyer, and potentially all the way to Lowell. Now, this past May, Lakeshore Report's Steve Walsh spoke with RDA President Bill Hanna about $6 million a year for 30 years, earmarked for the project by the State General Assembly.
So we were looking for closer to $10 million a year, and the reason is that we wanted to have transportation-oriented development, or TOD as it's known, which is really where a lot of value comes out of these things, where you have a mixed use around a train station. That part was not included, and so we were looking for more of a $10 million for 10 years type of model, and what we got was 6 for 30, or $180 million to go to the Westlake extension. So this is a better package. It's more money. But what it really does is shift now the attention onto A, building the train, and B, working with the communities to do the TOD projects on the existing line as well as the new line.
Before we get to like what might be around the train line, talk about the train line. This is a $571 million project. Right. You're getting $180 million from the state. Where's the rest of the money going to come from? Right.
Well, we've raised some money locally. So I have to commend Lake County as an example that put $2 million of its seeded funds in this county economic development income tax money. And the great thing about this project, so you have a little over 3 collected already. We're trying to get 8 from the locals. There are some communities that have expressed interest in coming on board, a little bit down the road here. RDA has committed 8 as well. So we're getting very close to having all of the money in line to be able to do the bond issue to support the $571 million project. Now, half of those dollars are going to come from the federal government.
Since we aired that interview, the Regional Development Authority tried and failed to get a regional cities grant that it was hoping would help fund South Shore expansion work. However, Congress did pass a transportation funding bill which may free up some federal funding for the project. We caught up with RDA's Bill Hanna to ask how he felt about some of those recent developments.
This has been a huge year for the RDA and for Northwest Indiana in general, and some of the highlights have included some things people have talked about for a real long time, and they're coming to fruition, so it's been very exciting. Looking forward on Westlake, we're looking at 2018 to start construction. We're doing environmental impact studies right now, which is part of the process, so we're already in the process. We'll make application for the federal funds here soon. So, you'll start to see things happening, like I say, in the 2018 timeframe. We've been out in the communities right now talking about station house areas and having public engagement, and we've gotten some important feedback there that is helping us improve the project. And we're also currently working on double tracking the current South Shore line. So, it's important to understand that it's one system, and what double tracking will do up there is make it quicker. So we're providing access in the south and faster times in the north. So places like Gary, Hammond, East Chicago, Portage, Michigan City, and South Bend will be able to significantly reduce time to market and make them competitive with places like Naperville and Evanston and some of the north and west suburbs of Wicker Park and Bucktown and places like that. So this all adds up to some real significant advancements for us and access to jobs and increased real estate values and things of that nature.
So towards the end of the year here, it was kind of a good news, bad news situation for RDA because they didn't get that grant.
Right.
But there's still been a lot of real positive movements.
I'm always amazed at how some people don't want these transportation projects. I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but if you can get more people back and forth to Chicago for jobs, isn't that a good thing?
Well, because there are a lot more higher paying jobs in Chicago. Plus, I think that overall people want this to be like a Naperville sort of area that has benefited greatly from the vibrant commuter rail system that goes through there. So the South Shore expansion is something that's been discussed for, oh my gosh, for many, many years. In fact, I think they first officially proposed it back in 1989.
Maybe this is one of those things where the politicians just go at each other.
I don't know. I think that the tide has turned a little bit. This is very much a pet project of Pete Visclosky. He's nearing the end of his work in the House of Representatives. So
Right.
I think this is something that he would really like to push forward. And there's a lot of public opinion now that seems to be pushing in that general direction.
Right.
In 2015, a major project involving Chicago's south suburbs and communities in Northwest Indiana finally concluded. And Stephen, you got to get up close and personal with this massive Southside landmark.
I did, and it really takes your breath away to be in this, in the Thornton Quarry. It's just amazing. In the 1960s, Chicago area growth and increased water usage meant that sewers were overflowing about 100 days a year. The solution, the Tunnels and Reservoir Project. The $429 million project has changed the Thornton Quarry into the Thornton Reservoir. Last summer, we got a chance to get a look up close to see how this project is going to help prevent flooding. The Thornton Composite Reservoir, once it is finished, will be the largest of its kind anywhere in the world. Once it is completed, it will help divert overflow from sewers and prevent the water from making its way into people's basements. This massive hole, better known as the Thornton Quarry in the south suburbs just adjacent to the 80-294 Illinois Tollway, has been called in media reports the Grand Canyon of the south suburbs. According to the Encyclopedia of Chicago, since the 1830s, the Thornton Quarry has been a large source of limestone. The portion that now makes up the Thornton Reservoir is only a small fraction of the entire site. It's 300 feet deep. We had to drive down a carved-out road to get to the bottom.
Yes.
This is TARP, or Tunnel and Reservoir Project, also called the Deep Tunnel. This small section of the quarry is part of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago's master plan to deal with the overflow of stormwater and sewage.
Through that hole there, that you're gonna get the flow from about 90 square miles from the south side of Chicago, and that includes about 14 local municipalities. That reservoir will hold the capacity of 7.9 billion gallons.
In the past, sewer systems would fill up with water, and with nowhere to go, they would go back up into the basements or run off into area waterways. The combination of excess water and raw sewage hurts the environment.
We have to put this online so that all the sewage and all the combined sewer come to this reservoir for the storage. When the dry weather allow us to pump this, or actually to get this flow to the treatment plants so that could be treated before getting into the waterways.
The treated water is then sent to the Illinois River. When the reservoir is full, it'll look like a giant bathtub.
All the way to the edge of the concrete dam, which is up there. The flow will be high as the edge of the concrete dam in the south side.
For some homeowners in the Chicagoland area, the relief will mean a savings of over $150 million in annual flood damage savings. $40 million of that will go to the south side and the south suburbs.
That's eventually, it will relieve most of the flood issues within the area around here.
When it comes online on August 15th, it'll be able to hold 7.9 billion gallons of water, or 12 Soldier Fields stacked on top of each other. In Thornton, Stephen Lattimore, Lakeshore Report. And now an update. On Thanksgiving of last year, the Thornton Reservoir got its first trial run. So how did the new project work? Let's take a look. A heavy rain put the system to the test. Officials with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago say the water level reached 17 feet. That's only 5% of its capacity. The water was then held in the reservoir until it was pumped to the Calumet Water Reclamation Plant, where it was cleaned and then pumped into the Mississippi River. The Thornton Reservoir helps protect over 500,000 people in several communities on the south side of Chicago and the south suburbs from flood damage.
So Thornton Reservoir performed exactly as we had anticipated. Thornton is part of our tunnel and reservoir plan, which is made up of two parts. The first part is 109 miles of intersecting tunnels. That was completed in 2006. The second phase is 3 reservoirs. First reservoir was the Majewski Reservoir up in Des Plaines. Second one is the Thornton Reservoir, and the third one is McCook. The Thornton Reservoir was designed right near I-80, will serve 14 communities in the Southland area, designed to hold 7.9 billion gallons. And on Thanksgiving Day, we're really pleased to see that it held 400 million gallons of combined stormwater and sewage, which would otherwise have been in the community. So we're really happy that it's working exactly as we had designed. And we're anticipating it will reduce flooding damage in the area to the tune of $40 million.
So, Stephen, this is another one of those area projects that has been in the works for decades.
Right, right.
And now that the Thornton Reservoir is a reality, how is that affecting Southside communities?
Well, I spoke to a couple of people over there, and they say actually they had done some work previously, dams and levees that has kind of stopped the problem, but it's like you'd rather have this than not have it. Ask the folks in New Orleans. But another problem that happens that this will curtail is that a lot of that stuff is actually sewage and water. So now that we have this, we can actually put it in this location, clean it, and then ship it out clean, as opposed to putting all that polluted water and sewage into local waterways.
See, I hadn't thought of that. I was thinking of this as strictly kind of a flood control measure. I had not even considered the idea that it was actually a clean water measure.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen. Throughout the year, we were able to share with you some unique projects and the people behind them, thanks to the Society of Innovators of Northwest Indiana, an Ivy Tech Community College initiative. The innovations range from medical improvements to environmental and scientific advancements and more. Back in April, we visited the Port of Indiana at Burns Harbor, and we saw how its innovative business model is working to save taxpayer dollars and bring global business to Northwest Indiana.
The innovation that's associated with the port is our business model. We are a state agency, we are managing a state asset, but yet we have engaged a private entrepreneurial type approach. We're able to perform all of the duties, all of the responsibilities, all of the activities here without putting any kind of a tax or burden on any of the taxpayers of the state of Indiana. We're in the central part of the United States. We are 18 miles across the lake from the third largest city in the United States. Yet we will be having ships that have loaded in Europe, have loaded in Mexico, that have loaded in Canada, that will be loading out to many of those countries. Here we also have all of the infrastructure that is available to support that third largest city in the United States of Chicago. So we have the interstates, we have all 7 of the Class 1 railroads. We are connected to the inland river system. So we are connected to 20 states and 12,000 miles of the inland river. We are connected to the Atlantic Ocean with the ships that will be in here. But all of those different options for Indiana, for the businesses in Indiana, the employees who work for the companies here in Northwest Indiana, it is truly a global environment that they work in, both for where they can sell their goods, but not only that, but where they can source their raw materials. Last year was a record year. Last year was the best year ever for the Port of Indiana, Burns Harbor. Last year we brought in about 125 ships. We brought into the harbor, both into the public and the private docks, some 200 Great Lakes vessels. We also handled about 500 of the inland river barges. Or the port's strength that we have here is the intermodal capability of being able to switch from the maritime to the other modes. So we also brought in 12,000 rail cars, and we also handle through this port some 300,000 truckloads per year. The more we can ship via water, the smaller carbon footprint we put out, the less amount of fuel is consumed, and just it allows us the greatest economic advantages over any other mode. Since 2005, the port has not taken $1 out of any of the Indiana state taxpayers' pockets. We have been self-sustainable not only for our reinvestments on capital, but also all of our operating expenses. Like any other industry, it is constantly changing, and the innovations that are coming out 5 years from now will amaze us as we look back at how antiquated it was that we did things 5 years ago. There is no one thing that you can point to. There's only a group effort, and we are the we benefit from all of these companies, their great plans, the great labor, the great location that we are here, and all of the different modes that we can provide to those folks as flexibility in their sales and their sourcing of raw materials.
Final numbers from this past shipping season won't be available until later this month, but year-end shipments are expected to be the second highest total since 1994. Now, it's not quite near last year's record-setting numbers. The port also began a new partnership with Quebec to develop transportation along the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway, which would mean more cargo and possibly lead to more business here in the region. And that's one of those things that, well, we haven't seen the effects of that yet. That's something that's still coming. So what does that mean ultimately, this further development of the Port of Indiana for Northwest Indiana? Well,
more money for the engine that is the Port of Indiana. We actually got a hold of a study by Martin and Associates that was commissioned by the port in 2012. They say that the port generates $6.3 billion and creates about 52,000 jobs. So and those are middle-class jobs at about $50,000 a year. So it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And that's another one of those things that we're seeing right now where we're having a major impact on transportation infrastructure throughout the area. Governor Pence just put out some money to help improve the roads here,
65.
Particularly 65, which we're going to be seeing some widening thereof. We've got more money coming into the rail system, and now hopefully more money coming into the Port of Indiana. So it's a big thing to help drive the economic engine that is Northwest Indiana.
It is.
One of the other stories we did in 2015 is interesting because I think it's one of the first we'll be doing about this particular technology. Stephen, you got to cover this one.
I did. A high-tech tool that is being used by the United States in its fight against terror is now a weapon in the arsenal of one of the local fire departments. In August, I got a chance to go out to Cedar Lake to see how this cutting-edge technology is helping keeping civilians and first responders safe. Firefighters have a number of weapons at their disposal when they go out to save people's lives. A good fire truck, a stout crew helps, but now there is a new weapon. It's called the drone. About a year ago, the Cedar Lake fire chief was watching a real estate broker using a drone to check out houses, and he thought this might be helpful in fighting fires. He says the drone has revolutionized his ability to save lives.
While we're getting our resources geared up to go out there to check on people that have fallen through the ice, we felt that this thing would be a really nice tool to send out there to get some footage to see what we were dealing with before we went out. So as the guys are getting geared up to go out there, we can do a recon, go out there and check out the situation, and then come back and be able to tell the emergency responders how what they're actually dealing with out there.
Cedar Lake now has the ability to investigate fires by identifying burn patterns from above. He has numerous examples where it has helped their ability to rescue a victim or keep his crews safe.
We had an ammonia leak out of an ammonia tanker, and we didn't know what type of tools we needed to take with us because we didn't know we didn't know exactly what was leaking on it, what valves. So we flew the drone to the location and got a good look at the area where it was leaking, and then we were able to take the proper tools and the proper precautions and go in there and actually shut the ammonia leak off. We had a serious accident in our community where one of the vehicles ended up on the lake, and we had to actually go out on the lake and do an extrication out of the vehicle. And we flew the drone out there to keep an eye on our responders because it was dangerous. You're out on the ice and you had a vehicle, and these guys were in ice suits and trying to do an extrication. So we wanted to keep our eyes on them the whole time so that if something catastrophic happened, we had a second crew ready to go.
It helps them see the roof of a building for potential problems and protect his firefighters and civilians.
Being able to see the top part of a structure a little bit better if it's on fire. You can get a good look at it and see what the integrity of the roof is, whether or not we should be entering or not. It's just another real good tool that we thought would help the department.
The chief has also used the drone to check traffic patterns at large events. It can also be used to search for missing children, and if you add a thermal imaging camera, you can find heat signatures of people in buildings or at night. The unit costs about $1,500, and the chief says it's worth every penny and it's easy to use.
Real-time 1080 pictures. We can hook it to your phone, you can hook it to a laptop, an iPad, or even a TV, a larger screen, so that you actually have the footage in a very clear picture. That's real important when it comes to being able to pinpoint issues within the incident.
The current drone they're using doesn't have the infrared camera. That adds about $8,000 to $10,000 to the cost. They're going to be holding a fundraiser so that they can make an upgrade. In Cedar Lake, Stephen Lattimore, Lakeshore Report. Now, of course, the reason these drones are so popular is because everyone has one now between individuals and companies, and the FAA has been prompted to institute new rules and regulations.
And I don't think they have a choice, because I think that they approved roughly 1,000 commercial licenses for drones last year. That doesn't count individuals, and I think they're averaging like 50 a week.
There was a time where they just seemed to not do anything. Then all of a sudden they decided this is getting out of hand, so we need to register these drones. The new regs are basically this. You can't fly above 400 feet because that's where these planes are. You can't fly within 5 miles of an airport or national park. And you need to be able to see the device. That way you can keep better control of it. And the idea is that if something happens, they want to be able to track these folks.
Well, there's a lot of other concerns. I mean, companies like Amazon are talking about delivering packages via drone. There's going to be a lot more increased traffic, and that brings up not just safety concerns, but what about security concerns?
Right. There's also an issue with privacy. The way the law works with invasion of privacy is that if you're in your home, you have a reasonable expectation of privacy. But with a drone, you could go anywhere and look into somebody's house. So they want to let folks know you can't do that, obviously, or you'll be breaking the law.
Right. I think there's going to be more regulation and a great deal more discussion about drones and their use as we go in through 2016.
It's definitely going to be a top story, yes.
Thank you, Stephen. In 2015, we had a chance to visit Fermilab in Batavia, Illinois, where Purdue University Calumet professor Dr. Niti Parashar and her students are exploring high-energy physics. Most notably, Dr. Parashar's work contributed to Nobel Prize-winning research of the Higgs boson particle. The Higgs is instrumental to understanding life in its most basic form. That is how atoms bunch up together to create molecules, and molecules and atoms come together to create matter. Essentially, the building blocks of life and us as human beings and technology as we know it. Now, back in March, Dr. Parashar told Lakeshore Report that the discovery of the Higgs was just the first step to even more scientific endeavors and research. Well, since we first aired our story, Dr. Parashar has been awarded a grant from the National Science Foundation to continue her research. The grant, totaling $408,000, will allow her to support a postdoctoral fellow and students for 3 years to collaborate with scientists, engineers, and students worldwide as part of Compact Muon Solenoid, or CMS, collaboration. This is a big deal. I mean, first of all, confirmation that there is this Higgs boson particle out there, which was something that had been theorized, basically, but not confirmed. And since I think they confirmed it at the Hadron Collider in Switzerland, it's nice when you have these things that are, scientists say, we believe they're out there, now we have confirmation, but that's not the end of the search, is it?
Yeah, you know, for the average guy, they just want to know, what does this mean for me? One thing in my research that I found out is that this was connected to the PET scans, where you basically get iodine, and then they can do a scan that looks at you, gives you a really good picture of your insides. But then, you know, as you look at it even wider, in the space program, nobody knew what was going to be generated other than to get to the moon. Well, there are a number of things. The smoke detector, LED lights, all of these things came about as a result of needing to put a man in space. And now we're using those, common
So basically, all the steps forward that we're making in theoretical particle physics are things that are eventually going to have ramifications, real-world ramifications for all of us.
Right. And the thing is, we don't even know. I mean, until they get to that point, they realize, oh, you know what, we can use this for that.
Right.
But the only way you do it is by doing it. I mean, the only way you get those innovations is by going out there and doing the work.
Well, it's exciting that some of those innovations maybe will be coming from our folks over at Purdue Cal. So that's really
Right
cool.
here in the neighborhood.
Thanks so much, Stephen. What do you think some of the big stories will be that we'll be following here in 2016?
Well, one of the things that I'm thinking in terms of legislature is Senator Rogers decided that she's not going to run again.
And we probably will be talking about that next week.
And I don't know who's going to take her place, but that's going to be a hot race. She's been there 34 years.
Wow, that's a big thing. And speaking of politics, we've got some huge stories coming up. Pence is up for re-election in the gubernatorial race. We have a presidential election this year, and I know we and everybody else will be talking about that throughout 2016.
And then the ramifications of this new gun law by the president. He's doing it by executive action, but you know, there's no idea of how it's going to impact the race for the governor and the local races here.
Right, and it'll be interesting to see how that holds up in the courts and how it holds up, as you say, within the political cycle, what happens there. Before we leave you, here's our first Eye on the Arts of 2016.
Hi, joining me for this edition of Eye on the Arts is South Shore Arts Gallery Manager Bridget Erdenshaw. Welcome,
nice
Bridget.
Nice to be here today.
Yes, well, you've been here before, but in a different capacity in the arts.
Yes.
And now you're working for me. So that's nice. It's nice to have you with us. So you're here to tell us about the big Ansel Adams exhibit at the Center for Visual and Performing Arts.
Yes, in our main gallery, the Bachman Gallery, we have a 72-piece Ansel Adams show.
That's big.
Yes, all original prints that he printed himself for his daughter, Anne. It's a beautiful show. It's got when you walk into the gallery, it kind of goes in order, a little bit chronologically, but it starts off with his earlier pieces, and then it travels through kind of a Southwest type of period he had, and then it goes into more of a commercial era, and then it kind of goes into the details of the national parks, and then through the middle is where you get the big national park scenes and in the most iconic pieces of his show there.
Yeah. So this was a set that he printed and then gave as a gift to his daughter,
Yes.
Anne.
Yes, and now it's kind of traveling around, but it's one of the largest groupings of his original prints. So.
Yeah, 72 is a big show.
Yes.
It is. They're not huge pieces necessarily.
No, but they kind of vary in size, but you can stare at them forever because they just go deep and they're sharp and they're just beautiful. So.
Yeah, and the contrast and the composition and all that stuff that makes Ansel Adams a great photographer.
Yeah, and he worked with the Zone system, which was a white to black series, and in every single piece you can see the extreme whites to the extreme blacks with those colors in between. It creates such a depth in every single picture that he had done. So.
And this, the exhibit is the property of now the Peoria Riverfront Museum.
Yes, and they loaned it out to different areas. Right before it was in Munster, it came from Korea, so traveled quite a bit.
Yeah, and so it arrived from Korea.
Yes.
In Munster.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to Peoria.
Yes.
Afterwards.
And it'll travel somewhere else for a little while. But.
Yeah, it is. It's a terrific show. So there's this. There's this a $2 admission, I think.
There's a $3 admission for adults, and then $2 for students and children. And the gallery is open every day, Monday through Fridays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturdays from 10 to 4, and Sundays from 12 to 4.
And the exhibit runs through when?
January 24.
So just a couple more weeks to see it, really.
Yes, and there's the special VIP reception that's on January 19th.
Yes.
And that'll be a $50 admission fee, but you get beer and wine and hors d'oeuvres. So
it's good.
It's a wonderful night,
Yeah, those are always fun, those VIP things.
Definitely.
But we have to tell the Riverfront Museum people that we are not serving food and
No
wine
wine
in the gallery. So if
at
they
all.
see this through the ether, through the YouTube, we don't want them to get upset. We don't want them to think that Ansel Adams is going to be
Yes, it won't
jeopardized.
Be in there.
All right. Well, thank you for being here to tell us about the show, which does look fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Eye on the Arts. Eye on the Arts is made possible in part by South Shore Arts, the Indiana Arts Commission, and the National Endowment for the Arts, a federal agency.
And for more information on this or any of our stories, you can always go to lakeshorepublicmedia.org. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope Hope to see you next time
Bye
on
now.
Lakeshore Report.